I think that now that they're going into this year, we're able to see Ashton Bethel-Roman and Terry Bussey. At least my prediction is that they're going to split reps 50-50. I think it's going to probably be an even split down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of make sense in your mind as well, that we're probably going to see them both kind of in that Z spot, maybe get 50-50 reps depending on the scheme?
Yeah, and I think specifically, I was actually talking to one of my writers who was doing kind of a preview with the wide receiver when we were kind of going back and forth, and that's where I really had to think about it, right? Because it is, fans have their own opinion of who they think should start. And they're not football coaches. I'm not saying we're football coaches either, but, we get paid for this kind of stuff. But I'm just going to say that I've seen what Concepcion can do in the middle of an offense, right? I know what his ability after the catch. I know how slippery he is in the middle, having outlasting a linebacker and really just matchups, right? He's also I think he's the active leader in touchdown receptions right now with 16. This is somebody who you want to put at the most favorable spot in your wide receiver rotation, which I think is the slot based on how Klein runs his offense. But again, the X position, college and NFL is a little different there, right? It's like sometimes an NFL offense is kind of like the Dallas Cowboys with George Pickens. Sorry about that, brain fart. They're going to use him more as a jump ball type of X, right? Kind of like Des Bryant was for their offense, and that frees up CeeDee Lamb. That's somebody who were last season, outside of Dak's injuries, CeeDee Lamb just was the number one guy. He had to line up everywhere. Now you can line him up specifically at one spot, most likely in the slot. He's going to thrive there because George Pickens is going to take coverage away because he's always going to usually beat his guy. He's going to be open, or he's at least going to just muscle his way down the boundary. Now, is that going to be a Mario Craver type of guy to do that? Or like you said, like a Ashton Bethel-Roman maybe? Now, Bethel-Roman's not that big. He doesn't look like the strongest guy. He's a little thinner, right? I think he's more of a burner. We've seen Craver in coverage, and he can hold his own. There's that video of him going against Tyreek Chappelle. Like, he can muscle his way through coverage and make a catch. So maybe he is going to be that guy, which is just going to free up Concepcion to just eat inside. And Bethel-Roman being that Z who can run those go routes and beat his man just based on pure speed. And it's going to give Marcel Reed more options, right? He's going to have – think of it this way. Last season, he only had maybe one guy who could separate consistently. Maybe, right? Maybe. Now I think he has three, right? That's the big – two or three, right? That can
let's say three plus.
3+ right now, right? We don't know what Terry Bussey is going to look like specifically. I just don't know because he's still young and he is transitioning full-time to wide receiver for the first time. So I think we should temper the expectations a little bit. I don't judging him off of practice tape and the fact that he's not as quick as some of the other guys. That doesn't mean anything, right? Because if he can beat his man and he catches the ball and he runs his route correctly, that's all that matters, okay? That's really all that matters. So it's wait and see, right? But again, it's very encouraging that this entire last 2 weeks through 11 practices now, Ashton Bethel-Roman has been singled out almost every day. And I think he was today. I think I'd have to look back at Colin Klein. I think he said another player we could talk about, Jamarion Morrow, who's the freshman running back, who's got a lot of play, who did play a lot during the scrimmage because Le'Veon Moss, who we'll get to, is not playing in these scrimmages. A good decision there, okay, because you don't want anything bad to happen to that young man. Ruben Owens, I think, he's participating, but I don't think it's the type of high snaps that he was maybe getting last year before his injury. And again, these are just injury present. This is trying to prevent these guys from getting hurt in practices that don't mean as much as the games, right? So they mean a lot for installments and stuff like that, but you want to prevent this. But either way, the drum beat keeps getting louder for a player who could end up being maybe the second leading receiver on this team this season.
Yeah, 100%. And who knows, maybe in that scrimmage they had this last Saturday, he had one of these many explosive plays that we've been hearing coming from players like Nate Burkhardt today, where he had raving things to say about the offense. He was able to say to media today, there was a little bit of media availability, after their practice today. He said, "Hey, during the scrimmage, we had a lot of explosive plays. I want to tell you all that right now." And same thing happened with Colin Klein. He reiterated that, "Hey, we probably had more explosive plays in this last scrimmage than we've ever had before in these practices or scrimmages so far." So I think that is something that we're going to probably see a little bit more of, because what was one of the problems this last season? It was generating explosive plays for this A&M offense. They were very, very consistent in marching down the field, but where are those explosive plays coming from? We saw one in the Florida game where Marcel Reed was able to hit, who am I forgetting? Wide receiver up on the seam left side.
Oh, Cyrus Allen.
Yeah. Cyrus Allen for that 50-plus yard touchdown. And really after that, you're seeing a lot of the other explosive plays are coming from up the middle, maybe with Le'Veon Moss, 50-yard burner against Missouri, kind of putting icing on the cake in that second half. But if you are looking at this next season, you are wanting more generation of explosive plays coming from this offense. And I think that's why it's been tailored to Marcel Reed this year. He's had a full year as the starter to get used to exactly what Colin Klein is preparing for him. He's brought in guys like Nate Burkhardt from Nebraska. He's brought in guys like Texas tight end.
Oh, Mar Nabok, Michael Riley. Yep.
He's brought in these guys who are willing pass catchers, especially Amari Niblack. I know that he's been turning heads, especially in the receiving game. I would expect Nate Burkhardt to be the starter as of right now with Theo Millen-Orstrom. I've heard those two are kind of the end-all, be-all when it comes to veteran senior guys when they're on the field. They've been kind of the most consistent pass catchers on that tight end spot. But from your point of view, how does this A&M offense generate more explosive plays?
I think it starts in the run game, which, the run sets up the pass, the moniker that obviously every team tries to aim for consistency. But in this case, that really is the truth, because if you're going to load the box and you're going to have this three-headed monster, what we think is going to be with Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens, and Amari Daniels, potentially E.J. Smith at this point. I mean, all these guys are playing well. Who knows? And Jamarian Morrow, who's playing a lot more now because of just his versatility and his quickness. But if the offensive line lives up to expectations, this run game is going to be the best in the SEC. And I will say that definitively, the best in the SEC. I have seen other people say that. It's not just us in A&M media saying that and trying to hype it up. It's true, because you don't bring back this type of talent in the O-line and this type of talent that we already know is highly talented and versatile at the running back position, and basically tell Marcel Reed, you have to get this much better for this offense to be anything. They're not telling him that. They're saying, no, you just need to improve. And he knows it, right? He knows that he has to improve, and he's already done that so far in the areas he needed to improve in, which one of them was his deep game. One of them was hitting those deep balls. If you can run the ball and average 6 yards per carry, pretty much like what Le'Veon Moss is doing, just shredding defensive lines and pretty much getting a first down every other play. Again, they're going to have to respect the run, and Marcel Reed is going to have a day through the air, because he's going to get guys open. We've seen Concepcion in practice just how quick-footed this kid is. He's an unbelievable athlete. I honestly can't believe that A&M has a guy like this, because we haven't seen a guy like this since Christian Kirk, right? We just haven't had a guy like this in a long time. So it's usually been, you go back to obviously Noah Thomas, Josh Reynolds, even, who was very productive, obviously the last 1,000-yard receiver for A&M. But again, some of these bigger guys who, yes, were scheme versatile, but they don't have the type of talent, and I mean NFL type of talent that Concepcion has. And look, Josh Reynolds has a great career in the NFL, so that's, including him, is probably disrespectful. But again, we can't talk about the speed anymore, right? That they have it off because we're getting redundant here. But that's automatically, and we're going back to Ashton about the run, and we both agree on this. We were just discussing that you have this 1A, 2A type of wide receiver conundrum right now, where it's just a bevy of treasures that you can just kind of count on, that if one guy goes down, we're just going to call this guy up, and we're not going to lose a lot of production or athleticism. So we know how to use them. That's why they're really playing these guys as much as possible and getting as many practice reps as possible, because in these first two games against UTSA and Utah State, you know that you have to generate explosive plays against Notre Dame to have a chance to win. You have to have at least two of those, especially if it's a tie game and the defense is really wearing down on A&M's O-line. You have to hit those long passes. You have to get those chunk yards, and that's going to take, obviously, poise in the pocket from Marcel Reed, but it's going to take confidence early in the season. So really, to answer this question without, again, going on a diatribe, these first 2 weeks are extremely important, is that you not only have a balanced offense, but you take chances through the air. Like, you get Marcel Reed comfortable to take those deep passes, to get Ashton Beltherome and Mario Craver in those situations where he's going one-on-one with their guys down the middle of the defense or on the boundary, and just get him some practice there, get him some confidence. Because if that happens and they develop a rapport, those are going to come, because they're gonna be open, right? They're gonna have opportunities that they didn't have last season, because the entire year we talked about this offense, and the one thing that was consistent was these guys can't separate. Well, if they can separate, you have no reason not to generate these explosive plays on a consistent basis. I'm not saying you're going to have like 3 or 4 each game, but 1, 2, maybe 3, but big plays, big touchdowns that are going to get this team fired up, that's going to get this offense in a groove, and again, is going to get Marcel Reed in a good headspace so he doesn't make boneheaded plays, he doesn't throw bad interceptions because he's doing too much. I think that's Colin Klein's plan, because he knows Colin Klein's offense is, if you can run the ball, there are going to be opportunities for you to get the big pass, right? Because those guys, if we have speed at wide receiver and they can separate in coverage, you're going to get a big play or two. Like, they're going to be open. You just have to hit your guy. That was harder to do last year, and that's why I can attest that when Le'Veon Moss went down, it completely screwed everything up, because they didn't have depth in the run game. They couldn't run the ball as well as they did. Shout out to Amari, who had a good end of the season, but just there wasn't enough behind him. And again, your offense was in shambles because you just didn't have that balance anymore, and you couldn't generate through the air, and you really couldn't run the ball. So it's basically Marcel Reed just kind of running around trying to find guys. And you go back to the Texas game, that's what this offense looks like when you don't have adequate talent, which they now have. There's your long-winded answer for a question that is easy and hard to answer. That's what I'd say. I think we have to get through the first game to really see what this offense looks like.
Yeah, I think you are exactly correct. I think for my own understanding, I went back and I'm looking at how the Aggies generated yards per play last year. I think they were good for 63rd in the country, or at least tied for 63rd with teams like North Carolina, Marshall, Cincinnati. So basically all these teams where, like I said before, they were more consistently pushing the ball down the field per play rather than generating those big plays. Like, your number one offense overall was, Miami. They had these offensive playmakers to where they are averaging over 7 yards a play. And teams, I think, like Ohio State and Ole Miss were other teams where they were generating over 7 yards a play on these big touchdown runs, on these big 20-plus yard plays. So I'm very, very interested to see, and maybe it was a little bit of a teaser by Colin Klein and Nate Berkshire today, where maybe there are some offensive playmakers that are going to have this big play ability. We talked about Ashton Beltherome before, but I really do think that some of these big plays are going to come from these little plays that turn into big plays. Maybe it's a dump off to the tight end, which turns into 20 plus yards. Maybe it's a little halfback slip screen that comes out of the backfield where everybody's keying in on Marcel Reed. Everybody kind of forgets, oh, wait, there's Ruben Owens out of the backfield with 3 offensive linemen going in front of him down the field. So I think it's it'll be really, really fun to see, especially against UTSA, what they pull out of the bag for those explosive plays.
Yeah, to kind of go off what you were saying is that having that versatility, right? Having those playmakers back, like, and I think that Ruben Owens being hurt last season really just threw an entire wrench in what they wanted to do, because we talked about this ad nauseum that you go back to the Notre Dame game, that took away what they wanted to do with even Connor Wegman at the helm, even though he was dealing with a shoulder injury. But those halfback type of options in the passing game, those screen opportunities, you didn't have the guy to do that. Le'Veon Moss can do that, but again, you want a Ruben Owens who is just a superb athlete who, like we said, when he gets out in the open field, he looks like a gazelle, right? And that's the type of elite, really, I would call him more of a hybrid type of player that just makes that offensive scheme more complete. And I think Colin Klein's very excited. You could tell he had a smile on his face throughout that press conference, because he finally has a full offensive arsenal to work with. And he can finally open that playbook up to where it's going to benefit Marcel Reed. It's going to benefit every wide receiver. And it's really going to benefit that running back room, to where Le'Veon Moss is the team starter. He's going to get those heavy snaps. But at the same time, you've got a situation where you need to figure out how you're going to use these guys. And I think that was a perfect example of that, is that I think that the screen game's going to be back. We saw a little of that against USC in the bowl game. That was the offense I wanted to see. And again, I remember talking to someone, I was like, where was this offense? Where was this? Oh, I know. This is probably what we're going to see more next season. And especially, this was before they got Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. So now knowing these guys are in there, now knowing the rise of Ashton Butler-Roman, now knowing Terry Bussey's going into year 2, this guy's the limit for the play calling. And I think that's just, again, it's all about Marcel Reed's headspace, which we've already seen throughout the offseason. He's a very confident young man. He's always got a smile on his face. The locker room loves him. He's not, and give it to Robert Behrens, who's been on the show, obviously, of Good Bull Hunting, one of the best X follows you can have. I don't care if you're an A&M fan or not, but he basically said the hot take, knock on wood, was that Marcel Reed's going to stay healthy the entire year based on, obviously, A&M's quarterback.
Bold words coming from Robert.
I know, right? It's like, I'm here. Yeah. So if that happens and he does improve, you can't tell me A&M's not a 9 or 10 win team. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%.